Yeah, that's what I want to hear. I haven't read it, but
That's more time at the end to do some discussion and networking. Dear distinguished guests, panelists, ladies and gentlemen, we do have very few gentlemen. I feel like that's an unfortunate thing. But hopefully with panels like this, we can raise more awareness about this issue and how it affects women and girls all around the world. I'm honored to welcome you to all this event organized by Carrington UK to address a fundamental issue affecting millions of people worldwide, period poverty. Today, we are here to discuss how period poverty affects women's education in Sub-Saharan Africa and to hear from our esteemed panelists and about their experiences and insight on the issue. The reason we mentioned Sub-Saharan Africa because as a charity we are working in Sub-Saharan Africa, but we are all aware that this issue affects almost everybody in every country. Here in New York, in London, Berlin, in Philippines, you name it. So do not get offended by saying only Sub-Saharan Africa. It's not an issue, as I said, only in Sub-Saharan Africa. Otherwise, I want to underline that this problem affects all countries, and I'm sure our panelists will cover the issue from a broader perspective. As we all know, access to menstrual products, facilities, and education is essential for schoolgirls' well-being and economic empowerment. However, for millions of schoolgirls in Sub-Saharan Africa, period poverty is a daily reality. The stigma surrounding menstruation, lack of access to menstrual products and facilities, and the resulting shame and embarrassment led to schoolgirls missing their education and in some cases dropping out altogether. This severely impacts their education, economic opportunities, and overall well-being. According to UNESCO report, 1 in 10 girls in Sub-Saharan Africa misses their menstrual cycle, translating to about 20% of their school year. This is a significant loss of educational opportunities and a threat to achieving gender equality and sustainable development goals. Today, we are privileged to hear from our panelists who are experts in different fields, including education, public health, and development. They will share their insights and experiences on how period poverty affects people worldwide and discuss possible solutions and strategies to address this issue. I want to warmly welcome our panelists. First, Dr. Jennifer Martin. Jennifer is an award-winning researcher, technical specialist, and an activist with over 13 years of experience in public health programs, focusing on issues relating to gender equality, health innovation, technology, SRHR, complex stakeholder engagement, and business. And also we have Ms. Carrington Baker, who founded Women for Women by Women period in 2021 during her junior year at St. John's University. She needed to fight period poverty because 1 in 5 young menstruators would miss school due to the lack of access to menstrual products. And we have Mr. Ibrahim Yunus, a distinguished individual passionate about education and charitable work. Alongside his academic pursuits, he also served as the chair of a charity that aims to help young girls in Tanzania. And he came over from Tanzania. I know 3 connections, 15 or 20 hours flight. So thank you very much. I'm sure they will bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to this discussion. I would also like to express my gratitude to the Board of Trustees of Carrington UK for organizing this event and their commitment to improving the lives of disadvantaged communities in Sub-Saharan Africa. As I said before, we mentioned Sub-Saharan Africa because our charity is only working in Sub-Saharan Africa for now. Finally, I would like to thank all of you, our distinguished guests, for joining us in person and virtually today. Your participation and contributions to these discussions are invaluable. If you are not already doing so, please follow us at Time to Help UK on almost all social media channels. And we have some freebies, some topics, notebooks, pens, and leaflets. Please grab one, and if there is anything left, take more than one. I don't want to take them all the way. Trust me, it's quite difficult. So Without further ado, I would like to pass the microphone to our following speakers, Dr. Jennifer Martin. Sorry. So we are going to have like 15 minutes presentation, and feel free to ask your questions to Dr. Martin.
Okay, good morning, everybody. And I'd like to start off by saying thank you to Time Health for inviting myself and my colleagues here. And it's an absolute honor to be speaking during the NGO Commission Status of Women. So today I'm really going to be looking at and explaining and talking about the overall view of global menstrual health and its impact on education. So my name is Dr. Jenny Martin, and I know that Angus has just done a fantastic job of introducing me. I'm the Global Director of Pandemic Periods. And Pandemic Periods was actually founded during the COVID-19 pandemic, when we realised that menstrual health was being largely left out of pandemic response and even wider sexual reproductive health responses during the pandemic. We were seeing supply chain shortages. We were seeing girls who would have previously got access to products through schools being unable to get them because of the confines of the restrictions of the lockdown. And we found that more women and girls were being pushed further into poverty, which would result in them having to choose between whether they could access period products, spaces in which they could manage this period appropriately, and the education and information they required so they could attain their menstrual health due to COVID-19 restrictions. So Pandemic Periods, we are the first and only organisation that works directly with grassroots advocates in 27 countries around the world. And what we do is we work with those advocates, and we give them more experience in activism, policy, research, and we encourage them to advocate for menstrual health within their own context, because we really want to work within a grassroots model. And we know that the knowledge and expertise of these individuals can feed into driving a more diverse global menstrual health narrative. So I am standing here today as an empowered woman who is menstruating right now. And what I think is really interesting that we have this discussion. We're in this forum right now at the Commission Status of Women, the first in-person one in several years. And we're having a discussion about menstruation. Now, I'm going to take you back to when I was when I started menstruating. This is a picture of me running and looking a bit out of breath, but I actually was quite a good track star when I was about 14 years old. Now, when I started my period, I was 12. I came from an African family in Glasgow, and my mum and dad were a nurse and a doctor. And I can distinctly remember my mother saying to me, "We're going to have to tell your dad. We have to tell your dad." And I was like, "Oh my God, please don't," because I was so embarrassed, and nobody had said to me, "Look, this is okay. Like, remember, we're clinical. Like, it's fine." So it was just very innate response. I was also the first girl of 3, and my mother was dealing with this for the first time. So after that initial reaction from my mother, I then hid my menstruation because I was so embarrassed and ashamed. Now, when I got to about the age of 13 and 14, my periods were so heavy that I would actually bleed through pads, overnight pads. And unfortunately, my school uniform was dark brown, which at the time I thought was absolutely horrendous. I would be bleeding through my brown skirt, through my pads, onto the chair in school. And I can remember sitting in French class one time, realising it had happened again, didn't know who to speak to, felt very ashamed, and would just have to sit and mop up the blood, which would be bleeding onto the chair, and wait till everybody left in the class so that they didn't see that. And then I would have to run to the bathroom and try and wash my skirt. And I didn't want to speak to the school nurse because I didn't want to speak to an adult about my menstruation. Then, when I was around 18 years old, I realised that menstrual pads were actually causing the rash that I got every month. I didn't realise that was something that not everybody experienced. So at the age of 18, I was also experiencing rashes, and this all impacted my engagement with education. I was stressed, I was anxious, I didn't know who to talk to. and it made me think about sexual and reproductive health rights and menstrual health. And as an affluent woman from Scotland, I now know that I had been experiencing period poverty. So what I'm trying to say and demonstrate from that story is that we often focus on access to menstrual products. We often focus on access to menstrual products, the provision of affordable, safe and hygienic products. But we also have to think about menstrual health in a more holistic way. Menstrual health is not only about access to products in a timely way, affordable products, safe, hygienic products, but it's also having access to sexual and reproductive health education so that we can manage our periods appropriately. It's about having access to hygienic spaces, running water, discreet disposal, and it's about having access to them so that they're safe. Now, I can remember when I was out working in India in 2016, and one of the issues that we found was that when women were wanting to manage their periods, they were finding that they didn't want to go to the toilets that were in the area that they could use because men were watching them. And that was like, I think it's such an interesting point about safety and the safety of women and what you need to be thinking about, an additional component to menstrual health. And then the other component is really, again, addressing those environments that perpetuate menstrual stigma and shame. I think it's important to have a conversation, but it's also important to understand that not everyone has developed a vernacular to be able to convey what their experiences are because they haven't had discussion and they're not in the spaces that we're all in. So that's a little bit of background for you and my personal experiences of period poverty. And why I'm really telling you all this, and I feel like you're all going to know this. There's 1.9 billion women, adolescent girls, transgender men, and non-binary individuals that are menstruating every month, according to the United Nations Population Fund. Now, the UNFPA also estimates that on any given day, there's 800 million people menstruating, and roughly 500 million of them are experiencing some or several of factors that are relating in poor menstrual health, or as we are calling it, period poverty. And what I really kind of tried to articulate as well is when we're thinking about menstrual health and menstrual hygiene management, it's a public health issue, but it's also a human rights issue. Like, we have the right to attain our menstrual health. We have the right to be present in spaces that are going to facilitate our menstrual health. In the workplace, in education, in leadership, we need to be able to have these conversations so people will realise that menstrual health is just part of our basic needs, our human rights. And it's also really important if we want to achieve the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, no poverty, and good health, gender equality. So we really need to be thinking about this in a more holistic way. Now, back to the education issue. So I wanted to just include a couple of stats here. So in the UK in 2017, Always, which is a menstrual, I'm sure you've all heard of it, menstrual product production company, they estimated that 1 in 10 girls were missing school because they couldn't access products. And then it was similar, the stat was also echoed in Sub-Saharan Africa, but we see this across the world. Earlier, this is not an issue that is is a global issue. It's operating, and it's people that are menstruating are finding it. That you sometimes you're in period poverty and sometimes you're not. It depends on the situation you're in. It depends on your financial situation. It depends on the spaces that you're in, and it can just depend on excuse me, on whether or not that you have means, and that can be the means as in financial means, transport, to be able to access what you need when you need it so you can take your menstrual health. So back to adolescents and menstrual health. Some of the things that I think are really important when we're thinking about education and how the menstrual health really impacts, or poor menstrual health impact education, is about knowledge and attitudes. It's about being able to talk to adolescents about their menstruation, how they manage it, and be able to talk about it in a way that is open, but not open in a way to make them feel uncomfortable. We've all been an adolescent. It can be challenging to talk about these different aspects of your body, your reproductive health. So to be able to do it in a way that is using the language that they understand is really important. One of the things I think is really interesting is you probably all have heard of the Period Products Provision Scotland Act, which was the first act in the world to provide universal access to menstrual products, information and education as and when needed for everybody across Scotland where I'm from. Now, this is a fantastic act, but one of the things that makes me feel slightly concerned is that if we start to give beauty products in spaces, we're stopping that discussion and conversation. So how are we then thinking of knowledge and attitudes, and how are we supporting that, particularly for adolescents? That's something that we need to think about. Stigma and shame is not just about hiding periods. It's not about just having products in the bathroom. It's about being able to have that self-efficacy, be able to build body autonomy so you can advocate for yourself, be able to access products as when you didn't have that conversation, to be able to speak to a teacher, to be able to speak to a health professional, to be able to speak to a parent. That is so crucial. And it took me 20 years to even have a conversation with my mother about my menstruation. And I think that that's something that we need to address and we need to think about moving forward. So the other additional thing is the impact of sports. So we see that girls often drop out of sports when they're menstruating, and there's some small things that you can do, like changing the colour of the uniform and the shorts from a light colour to a dark colour. Being able to have those conversations openly about women's health and to be able to understand that sometimes people just don't feel comfortable. I can remember when I was running, I read an article in like Cosmo that said that during your period you have more energy. I'm not sure if that's even true, because like when I've got my period now, like all I want to do is lie in a dark room. But so these are the places where I was getting information about my periods and information about period in sports, and it's probably also angled at a much older group of women. So it would be, I would like to see us doing more around that stuff. And then thinking about gender responsive spaces. So we say gender responsive, it's responding to the needs of adolescent girls, gender diverse individuals. How do we make sure they have what they need? If it's going to be, for example, running water so they can wash their hands when they're changing their products. We know that not everywhere has that. When I was working in Zimbabwe in 2015, for example, I was working in a hospital on a paediatric ward, and we didn't have running water half the time. So the healthcare professionals were unable to wash their hands. Also, people that were staying in the hospital were unable to wash their hands as well. That would be before dinner. That would be, I remember a woman telling me that she had asked me to find her some water because she changed her products and she was embarrassed. And I was like, don't worry, it's fine. But at the same time, that's not up to me to judge her in terms of embarrassment. I need to be aware that I'm going to talk about menstruation more openly. So building those spaces, making them gender responsive, but also highlighting that we do need to have it mainstream into thinking about the design of spaces for adolescents, education, health spaces, community centres, leisure centres. So, as I said earlier, our volunteers operate in 27 countries. And one of the things I really wanted to do today is to give them the opportunity to share their experiences of education and menstrual health. So we've got a short video that we're going to play, just so that some of our volunteers can have their experiences from their country.
Hi, I'm Angela, menstrual activities. And here are so many questions that also just to think of schools and schools to back up. Other than that, there's the issue of sanitation, the issue of not enough public education. So many girls feel isolated and ashamed and terrified during this time. Hi, I am Janet, a menstrual activist from Sierra Leone. Here at poverty has caused a lot of impact in the education of girls in Sierra Leone, particularly in the areas of affordability and accessibility of menstrual products. Because most of these girls are coming from low-income families, it is difficult for them to be able to manage themselves during their periods when they go to school. So so mostly in school. This has caused an increase in absenteeism and a total dropout. Hello, my name is John Martino, a communication facilitator. That's experiencing the decision dependent, both with social feedback and that has been not added to the back, not to be put on poverty. Period poverty is a barrier of gender, and telling this story puts the issue at the forefront of advocacy. And Dr. Justice is in period poverty is the greatest injustice of girls' education in the country. It contributes to high levels of activity, understanding, no confidence, because they cause a very level of the things that school do and they don't in order to access menstruation.
Okay, big thanks to all the volunteers who actually sent their videos in specifically for this event. So, oops, excuse me. I think I've already covered a lot of these aspects. Reaching menstrual health is not just about the provision of products, not also just about the provision of products and skills. Enshrining menstrual health rights and policy is a start, and that should be a minimum for us. We celebrate policy around the world, and it's phenomenal. It's fantastic to stand here to have so many gender-responsive, gender-transformative policies that address the rights and address the needs of individuals so they can attain their menstrual health. But period poverty doesn't end with policy. It also doesn't end with adolescence. It doesn't end with adolescence education. We need to be supporting non-school attending adolescents. And we also need to be supporting women over 18 years old. We need to be thinking again about the gender responsive space for adolescents. We need gender transformative campaigns address menstrual stigma and shame in education, in the workplace, everywhere, if I'm honest. And we need to be ensuring intersectionality. We need to make sure that we're capturing the voices of those that we need to work with and those that are experiencing period poverty, whether it's going to be working with people with disabilities or thinking about making sure that we're elevating the voices of women of colour who are leading this menstrual health movement around the world. We need to be thinking about offering adolescents a platform so that they can share their experiences and really giving them a seat at the table. I mean, how many frameworks have we seen now? Like, how do we implement those frameworks? How do we make sure they're actually responding to the needs of adolescents and making sure that they're responding to the needs of adolescents who are in school or out of school? And we need to think about co-designing programs, policies, practices with adolescents, but also with non-government organisations like the ones that we have here today, and thinking about how we can really actually truly demonstrate that this is going to be impactful and will be implemented, monitored and evaluated appropriately so we can demonstrate that impact. Engaging boys. I mean, I'm looking around, I can see two guys here today. So we need to engage boys more. I mean, I remember when I did sexual and reproductive health education, the girls were taken into a separate room and somebody put a tampon into a blue liquid. They're like, right, ladies, that's you. Okay, fantastic. That's really not helpful. So we need to have comprehensive sexual and reproductive health education, because let's be honest, menstrual health conversations are a gateway to talk about our broader sexual reproductive health rights. And we need to be having that conversation now, because we need to ensure that we are protecting our sexual and reproductive health rights now and for the future and for the next generation, the generation after that. If we want to attain Sustainable Development Goals 5 and gender equality, we need to be thinking about that now. It's only 7 years to 2030, and we've got 137 years to the World Bank until we reach gender equality. So we've got a lot of work to do. So I'm just going to leave you with this final thought. Achieving menstrual health is fundamental to the equality, rights and dignity of women, adolescent girls and all individuals who menstruate. If we want to have a pipeline of future leaders, if we want to have more women in education, more women in the workforce, more women in STEM, more women across the board, we need to be ensuring that their menstrual health needs are met. So thanks, everybody.
We might have some questions. Any questions?
Hi. Sorry. Yeah, thank you for drawing the attention that it's cross-cutting. It's not just access to products, and that's really important. In your experience, you work on the global level. What are the types of good example policies that maybe government levels are putting in place?
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned the Period Products Free Provision Scotland Act, and we're actually going to be doing talk about that on a policy talk on Friday. And what I think is interesting about that is that that does actually encapsulate all of the areas, but when you look at the breakdown of the 32 local governments across Scotland that are now dealing with the implementation, the focus is on provision of products, and the focus is on provision of products to schoolgirls. So it's again about socialising the governments and showing them why we need this holistic overview of menstrual health. And I think there's a lot, like, for example, Spain, they just enacted the policy that would allow free menstrual leave. We have policies in the government of Taiwan. I think the government of Taiwan, they work with faith-based leaders to address stigma and shame of women who are menstruating, who are going to the temple, to work with them to say that they don't have to not go because they're menstruating. But that's something that's like intergenerational. And we've done some work in Vietnam and in Thailand and in Taiwan. We found that that is quite a common thing. So addressing stigma and shame. We also had the International Family Planning Conference in Bangkok back in November. And during that time, it's not the minister, the governor, I think, is of Bangkok, announced some policies. Again, we're going to be addressing access to products, but also addressing access to comprehensive sexual reproductive health education, which includes menstrual health. And we actually are about to release a report which has a timeline, a chronological timeline of all the policies. I think the other good examples are Kenya, 2004, the first country to remove pink tax on menstrual products. I mean, that's a monumental policy. They also provide access to period products for schoolgirls, as do several countries around the world. And I think one of the things we also have to focus on is a lot of the time the policies that are held up as exemplars are from high-income countries. And this movement did not start in a high-income country, and therefore we need to be making sure that we are elevating other policies from in different contexts so that we can learn from everyone. Hi.
So you talked about gender transformative campaigns. What type of language or practices would you like to see implemented by people who address period problems?
So I think one of the things is when we used. Oh, okay, sorry. The question was around about gender transformative campaigns and the language. Is that better? Can everyone hear now? Yeah. Gender transformative campaigns. So I think one of the things that I would like to highlight is when we talk about period poverty is a paradoxical term whereby just the use of period poverty actually further perpetuates the stigma and shame surrounding the subject. And it also further perpetuates the idea that poor menstrual health is just about affordability of products, or it only is experienced by those living in poverty, which is not. So what I would like us to do is to move towards more inclusive terminology. If it was going to be menstrual dignity, if we're talking about menstrual health, I shared the definition earlier that was published in 2021. We need to be thinking about unifying movement. But what I would also say is, again, the drivers of poor menstrual health could be lack of access to wash facilities, therefore you might want to call it menstrual hygiene. It might be lack of access to menstrual products, which could be impacting somebody's psychological or physical health. There you might want to call it menstrual health. I also want to make sure that we are being inclusive in terms of being gender responsive and including gender diverse individuals, transgender, non-binary individuals that menstruate, because I do think it's really important. You can't pick and choose when you want to be inclusive. And we need to broaden the conversation to make sure, of course, we're not ever erasing women and girls and what women and girls have gone through, and women and girls who disproportionately are impacted by poor menstrual health, but that we are being truly inclusive and we are here together to fight for global menstrual health.
Can we get just one last question?
Okay.
Because we are running behind the schedule.
Sorry.
So do you find yourself or your organizations not only working to eliminate the negative connotation of periods, but also educating on how it is actually a positive in girls' life, help regulate the hormones, and also educating about the importance of proper nourishment and hydration during their periods?
Yeah, so the question was about the positive ramifications of menstruation, not just the negative, which is a great question. So I think that, yes, of course, I mean, we work and we partner with Girls Health Ed, and Girls Health Ed are based here in New York, but operate around the world. And their focus is on the positive body autonomy, the positive embracing menstrual equity, and making sure that you have what you need so that you can menstruate and not have any of the negative physiological ramifications, but you're also not stressed, it's not causing you anxiety. So although that we as an organisation, we focus on working with the activists and the advocates to really address some of these challenges relating to poor menstrual health, we do partner with organisations that are focused on the educational aspect and the holistic and positive views of menstruation. So thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jennifer Martin. She has drawn a broader picture to understand the problem. It's not all about having access to products. It's about understanding the issue in a holistic perspective. She has talked about her experience in Zimbabwe. I had a similar experience in another country. I don't want to name the country, because sometimes people talk about, when we talk about period poverty, people say, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa where we work, extreme poverty leaves people in choice, either buy food for yourself or buy a product, period products. But it's not about money most of the time. It's about understanding the stigmas. She said when she first started, she was embarrassed in a relatively developed country. But can you imagine this happening, in different countries? I have been in a country where we drove 3 hours and we couldn't find any hygiene products for the people we were trying to support. So even if you have the money, even if you are not living in extreme poverty, this problem can affect you. So without further ado, I would like to invite our next speakers, Ms. Carrington Baker. Sorry, by the way, we had an issue with the sound, so I do apologize for our online listeners. I did my best to solve it, and if it's not solved, please do beg me.
Hi, everyone. Let me just get myself together. Sorry. Can you guys hear me? Okay, hi everyone. My name is Carrington Baker and I'm the founder of For Women by Women Period. We are a New York City-based nonprofit that got started back in March of 2021. That was after I learned about period poverty. My first time really exploring the topic of period poverty was in 2021. And when I first heard about it, I was honestly upset. I was taken aback that there's so many individuals experiencing period poverty when we all menstruate. We all experience having our period every month. And that's just something I know I had the luxury of not thinking about. Where am I going to get my next products from? I was always able to afford when I needed it. And when I realized that there's people who do not have that luxury, I wanted to do something, no matter how big or small. And essentially that's what started the purpose of our organization. We honestly are very young, like I'm 22 right now, and so is everyone on my team. So we are learning more and more about period poverty every single day. And we just really want to not only create equality for all and making sure that everyone has access, we also want to start a good conversation around period poverty. Because I know that when I was in middle school and I got my period for the first time, I knew what was going to happen, but I still was just not prepared. I was scared. I didn't tell my parents the first 2 days. I was just like, oh gosh, what am I doing? And then I finally got to the point I was like, okay, let me tell them. But I wasn't the only one experiencing this. This was also experienced by all my friends that are in the organization. We all realized that we were so scared and shameful, and we felt nervous about speaking about our periods. And until recently, I didn't feel comfortable talking about my period until I started this organization. So essentially period poverty is something that cannot be addressed without actually acknowledging the period stigma and the damage that it has caused. A survey that was conducted by Thanks and Period. Thanks is an amazing period underwear brand that makes period underwear for young people to use, and it's an awesome alternative. And they found that 64% of people who menstruate believe that society teaches us to be ashamed about our periods. 69% feel that there's embarrassment to bring period products with them to the bathroom. And there's also 80% that feel there's a negative association with periods. These statistics made me feel not alone in what I felt about my period. I was definitely ashamed. I was also scared to go to the bathroom with my period products. I know everyone's probably notorious and has done this before, but you slide your tampon up your sleeve when you go to the bathroom. You do like this discreet thing and then you walk out of the room just to go to the bathroom quickly, and we're hiding it, but for what? What was the reason? And that was because we were kind of told, I know in the beginning, oh, you don't really need to tell anyone about your period. You deal with it and you keep it moving and you don't really make a big stink about it, essentially. And that was something that I felt when I was younger, and I know young people are still experiencing. And then also in the United States, of course, since we operate here, we do a lot of things in the US and look at a lot of US statistics. And we found that there's 58% of women that feel embarrassed for having their period. That's a large amount. I know they feel embarrassed up until you're in your 40s and you are experiencing menstruation. You're still shameful about talking about it, even with your peers and people who also menstruate. So I was mentioned before by Dr. Jennifer. She said that period poverty does present in different ways. There's, of course, the access to menstrual products. So that means you're not able to get what you need. You're in areas that do not have your pads and tampons as they would in developed countries. And there's also the having access, but not being able to afford those menstrual products every month. There is the pink tax present in the United States. And I know there's some states that have eliminated it, but many states have not. And the pink tax, especially now post-pandemic, has really had an impact on the cost of period products. I think this summer, period products went up like at least 2%, I believe. And so instead of being like $8 or something in the store, they're now $10 to get a pack of pads, and you need that every month, and that does add up over time. So if you can't afford to do that every month, you're now stuck with having to possibly use a tampon longer than the expected time that you should be using it, or you're stuck sitting in a pad all day because you want to make them stretch as long as possible. There's also the embarrassment and fear that surrounds periods in general. I mentioned before that I was embarrassed when I was younger, experiencing menstruation, to just talk to my friends about it. Even though we all knew we were getting our periods, no one was actually talking about it. We were all just kind of like, can you check me? Am I bleeding through? There was like, that's it. There was no like, oh yeah, I'm on my period. Can you just see really fast if I bled through my pants? It was always like a quiet whisper tone to each other. There's also the cultural alienation aspect of it. Different cultures use menstruation very differently, of course. Some cultures open it and they accept it with open arms and they celebrate when you get your first periods. But there's other cultures who may approach periods to keep it to yourself. Don't tell any male in your life that you're experiencing menstruation. Don't speak about it even to others who may menstruate. Just here's your pad and tampon, and this is what you need from here on out. And then lastly, there's the environmental aspect. Of course, the lack of supplies is a huge piece of the environment. And there's also the access to proper sanitary facilities. If you don't have access to running water, or if you don't have access just to even like wipes or something of that sort to keep yourself clean, you're putting yourself at risk for possible in certain infections and bacteria buildup that can be detrimental to our reproductive health. So period poverty has a big impact on education, of course, and also the wages of those who menstruate. 4 in 5 students in the US know someone or miss school due to their menstrual cycle. And in New York State, if you miss that much school, it's about possibly 44 to 55 days of school year, you're at risk for possibly being held back in your grade or not being able to continue on. So now your education is being impacted and you aren't able to be furthered pretty much along your educational journey just because you're at a disadvantage to having access to those menstrual products. Women in Bangladesh also have reported that they miss about 6 days of work a month due to their periods, which can be very impactful on one's salary. And also in Venezuela, a singular pack of menstrual products could cost 25% of their monthly minimum wage salary. And that's a huge percent. That's a quarter right there gone just because you need menstrual products. And so that puts women in the situation to choose, do I need menstrual products or do I need food? Or do I need to keep my lights on at night? So that is a huge piece of period poverty that we have to pay attention to, because honestly, these products should be free. They're an essential item that we need for our periods. And we shouldn't have to be putting certain things as a priority over them because we do need them. Also in the United States here in St. Louis, Missouri, 64% of low-income women have reported that they aren't able to afford menstrual products. And they're also in those situations as Venezuelan women of choosing, what do I need more of? Do I need to pay for food or do I need to pay for these products? And lastly, the statistic that sticks out to me a lot, because I just graduated college last May, is that 14.2% of college students in the United States have experienced period poverty. This is crazy to me because I know that there's individuals who I went to school with that are possibly experiencing period poverty that were just keeping it to themselves because there was no one else to seek out help with. For college students, you're obviously in a situation where most of us weren't making any money. We didn't have any financial support besides ourselves and possibly in some cases parents. But when it comes to menstrual products, you're not able to like think about, oh, I need to make sure I get this, but I also need to make sure I need to eat this month as well. So when I heard that stat, I was taken aback, and but fortunate enough, I was in college at that time, and that's when I started the organization. So we were actually able to distribute products to our student body that year and provide those for those that were in need. Also continuing to do that as well, because periods don't go anywhere. You can't just do it once and then never do it again. So we wanted to continue to provide those products on our campus. And so now brings me to the point of what organizations like For Women by Women Period, what do we do? So this is my team here. This is actually us in Washington Square Park not too long ago. We did a lot of, in the beginning days, we did a lot of distribution and canvassing in the park just to raise awareness about period poverty in general. When we first started raising awareness, people had no idea what period poverty even was. When it comes to the general public, that's the last thing they're thinking about. When most people think about poverty, they're thinking about food insecurity or not being able to access clothes or toothbrushes and soap and other hygienic products, but pads are the last thing that's on someone's mind. So by us raising awareness, people like, in a way, were like, oh yeah, that makes so much sense after we brought it to their attention. And from there, people have been very receptive to helping us and actually wanting to raise awareness along with us and supporting us in those ways. Of course, addressing the stigma, as I mentioned earlier, is another big thing that we are trying to do. And we want to make sure that we continue to do as through our journey along with many other organizations in the United States. And then also education is a big piece of like talking about period poverty. We can't just say, this is period poverty, this is what you can do about it, without actually educating everyone on the different parts of periods and reproductive health and what you may be able to do in your own community to end period poverty. And lastly, of course, providing menstrual products is a huge piece of it. There's many amazing organizations I know in the United States and also in other countries that are working to end period poverty. And also there's the support of certain companies that make pads and tampons that are also doing that as well. I know we were very fortunate to be a recipient of Cora's pads. Cora, they sell them in Target and stuff. And they are a company that for every purchased item, they will donate another item. And we were actually the ones to receive those donations. And that has been the most tremendous like accomplishment for us to actually be getting those products from them and also being able to distribute them, because without the help of them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And there's also other organizations like Honey Pot and On Flow that also work to end period poverty by donating an item per item that is purchased. So this is also another picture of our team. This is actually at one of our distributions that we do in the city. And the first thing that when I first got started with this and I started talking to my friends and everyone was like, yeah, let's do this. Let's figure out how we're going to help and make change. We all started talking about our experiences with menstruation and addressing the stigmas that we didn't even realize were bad when we first started talking about them. We all come from different cultural backgrounds, which has been very helpful in us understanding what menstruation looks like in different cultures. And we realized that even though we come from different backgrounds, a lot of us still had similar experiences with menstruation. And we realized that this can't happen going forward. We need to change this for the future generation so that they don't feel the way that we felt about our periods. Also creating safe spaces for conversations for young people. We actually have a youth program in Rochester, New York right now that operates, and they do their own product collection and like donating more instead of distributions. They donate to different shelters in their area. And also we have conversations with them. Like, I know I wish I had someone of my age to speak about my periods and other reproductive health diseases and any type of topics, because I didn't learn about a lot of them until recently. I started doing my own research and educating myself on what goes into menstruation, because there's more than just I bleed every month and I may have cramps. There's people who have certain reproductive health diseases like endometriosis or PCOS who don't even realize that they're struggling with that because no one is actually talking about it. And that's what we're trying to do with our youth program. We hope to expand to New York City soon. And then of course, we've distributed products across the boroughs. Since 2021, really 2022, more or less, we've distributed 95,000 products in the New York City area. And it has been like the most received thing by everyone we are actually distributing to. When we go to the distributions, everyone's excited to see that we have menstrual products because no one ever has them. They may have like 1 or 2 packages, but there's never enough for everyone. And there's never enough for your whole period. Like, you're not going to use 1 tampon or 2 tampons through your cycle. You're going to use multiple. And that's what we strive to do through our distributions. We distribute usually about 15 pads or tampons to each woman every month to make sure that they have what they need. And we also give to different mutual aid groups in the city that will distribute on our behalf to their populations as well, to make sure that we're getting every community that we are able to reach. And what are our plans for the future? We hope to, like I said, expand our youth program to really encompass more than just the Rochester area. We hope to get one in New York City soon. And also we're working on creating workshops for middle schools and high school students this summer to have more conversations, to speak about menstruation and just topics that we are not able to speak about, and do it in a plain language, not in the whole, like, this is an education thing, this feels like school. We want to feel comfortable for them so that they know they can come to us if they need anything. That's what we want to be for young people. And also, we hope to expand our donation network beyond the New York City and New Jersey areas. So far, we've been able to hit a lot of spots. We really want to hit more different like cities and areas so that we're impacting more individuals. And then lastly, we hope to curate safe spaces for inclusive conversations around reproductive health. People who menstruate are not just women. People who menstruate are also non-binary or transgender. And we want to include them in these conversations as well, because it's important, and they're experiencing the same thing that we're experiencing. They just don't have the same gender identity as us. And we want to acknowledge that and pave the way for them to be more involved in these topics. And this is our website. This is some more pictures of our team. If you'd like to check us out on Instagram, feel free. We post about our distribution and also just general education about what is going on surrounding menstruation and other reproductive health diseases. And also we have things, just fun stuff sometimes. We do some awareness things on there and we discuss different topics. But I really appreciate this opportunity to speak. This is my first time. And it was definitely a lot. Thank you. Do you have questions?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
3 questions in 5 minutes. Yeah.
You can go ahead.
So thank you so much, first of all. You did a fantastic job. I represent BPW at our local chapter here in New York City. So I'm very interested in connecting with you about expanding here. I'm just curious about, a lot of organizations do the donation and distribution. I'm just wondering the sustainability of that, and at what point we try to advocate for something like Scotland has done, where we push the responsibility to, the state or the country, or even establishments. I was at an event venue over the weekend, and you go into the bathroom, the women's bathroom, they have mouthwash in there, but there's no tampons or pads. I'm like, okay, so we can have, fresh breath, but we can't have a tampon, so I'm just wondering again, the sustainability of donation distribution versus, getting it to a higher level where there's more, responsibility for.
Well, she just asked about,
would you mind paraphrasing the questions for all
I will. She was asking about how is it sustainable to continue to distribute products on the scale that we hope to do and that we are right now. I will admit it is not the most sustainable thing. We have a very small team. There's 10 of us, and I'm like the only one with a car. So it's like we just speak to the organizations that we want to help, and we're like, just work with us, but we'll get you what you need. And what we try to do is give them more than what they ask for. So that way they don't have to call us in a month or so to ask for more. Hopefully they can sustain themselves for at least 3 months. And we try to get them on a schedule of like a little like every 3 months or maybe every 2 months, or even some of them are on like a biannual schedule where we just give them what they need. And then we just tell them, call us and we'll make it work. That's just how it is right now. And I feel like the best way to actually sustain this is to actually create different policies and really push for them to make products free and actually provide them in public bathrooms, and not just have the dispenser there that you have to pay for. They should just have them out on the counter for us. So it's definitely something that we're figuring out as we are going along this journey to sustain it longer. But I think the next move that really needs to happen is for them to create change in the government to actually provide free products. Okay, and then I'm right here.
So, it was great, thank you so much. But my question is, like adults in schools, like for example, some male teachers and things like that, like students that I have, they have like very strong stigma that they don't want those things shared in the classrooms. They don't want that to be discussed and talked about. So you were talking about youth programs. How do you think we can change that stigma and still be able to educate everyone, and not just particular people who like agree to have it in their classrooms? Like, how do you?
She asked, how do we plan on including everyone in this conversation pretty much about menstruation? And I just feel like, honestly, consistency. If we continue to speak to everyone, not just us as women and people who menstruate, but everyone outside of us also needs to really be okay with and comfortable talking about menstruation. We have to almost push it upon them in a way that it's annoying. So they have to just get to realize that this is what we have to do to make ourselves feel comfortable as well. You shouldn't be telling someone, don't speak about your period, because everyone knows somebody that menstruates, and none of us would be here if women didn't menstruate in the first place. It's the first part of being able to carry a child. So that's something that they're gonna have to like get with a program with it and figure it out, because they should not have that response. And if they do have that response, it is something that I would hope that you feel comfortable telling them, like, I should be able to talk about my period because I'm not the only one in here experiencing it. Most of this classroom is as well. And hopefully they'll change a little bit, but it may take a little bit of work with them.
Yeah, almost.
Yes, go ahead.
So how does your organization address the environmental impact of period products? Since a lot of times women are using 7 to 14 tampons a month, and then there's so many women throughout the world, and when they use all those products and the packaging, it can have that negative pollution or anything. So have you guys looked into like reusable pads or more environmentally sustainable options?
Yes, of course, it is like the environment is a very important part of like just when discussing period poverty, because we know we're producing a lot of waste pretty much. And I know it takes a while to get comfortable with the idea of using something that may be reusable. And we actually do have some menstrual cups that we try and distribute to people, but I feel like the first part to introducing reusable products to people is actually just educating on what they actually are. So I know a lot of people hear about it, and even myself at first, I was like, oh, that's kind of, I don't know if I'm ready to do that yet. Like it was something that I was like, okay, so I have to make sure I clean it and then do all this stuff. So it's a lot of steps that I had to educate myself on. And upon learning more about it, it does make a lot of sense. And actually our team is doing something right now. We're all trying a new product. We have some trying menstrual products and also period underwear as well, which are great alternatives. And I just feel like you have to really learn about it first and then test the waters a little bit and figure out if you're going to be comfortable with using those items. And we hope that we can distribute more, of course, but unfortunately with the people that we do end up distributing to, they're not as receptive to it at all. They're not even most of the time receptive to speaking about their period. So there's a lot of steps that have to come with distributing those reusable products, but we do think it's an amazing idea and something that we should push hopefully for the future so we don't create that much waste, everyone. But I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you so much for time to help, to including me in this. And thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Carrington. And it's great to see that young people are taking action. And that sentence made me feel old, you know, calling 20s young people. Well, yeah. So we want to focus on educational aspects because we believe women empower women. And if we don't have many decision makers, many women decision makers, so we can't solve this problem properly. And sometimes maybe you have seen a photo from a country, let's not name it. There's a room full of men discussing women issues, and they say, oh, look at this country, men are discussing the women issues and there is no man. Actually, most of the time, the problem comes from the men. So it's great to see them trying to do something. For example, in this hall, we should have more men, and we should include the men also in this conversation, because if we exclude them, that means excluding 50% of the world. So that's a very big number. So hopefully, as our speaker asked, listener asked, we should also include men, because most of the time they are the source of the problem, unfortunately. And now I want to invite, I think this one, yeah. Mr. Ibrahim Yunus from Tanzania to talk about the educational aspects. Sorry, we took some of your time, but I hope you can forgive us.
Is this the latest one?
Yeah, hopefully. Okay.
I think I made some changes. Can you update?
Oh, yeah, send again?
Yeah.
No, okay. Just a second. You send WhatsApp?
Yeah.
Okay, just a second. I need to connect my WhatsApp.
Sorry
So
for that.
I don't want everybody to see my messages. So we have to finish by 10, and I'm pretty sure you can talk to our panelists or any other speakers outside to do some networking and connections. Sorry about this, the Wi-Fi is not really well. Sorry, it's taking some time.
Do you think that I can start?
Yeah. Take this one. Yeah, you can start.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'm visible, right? From there.
Yeah. Go on, please.
All right. Okay. Is it afternoon? No, it's morning. Sorry. I'm still under a jet lag. It is about 30 hours of travel from Tanzania, and we are, I think, 8 hours ahead. So it's already in the evening in Tanzania. Sorry for missing the time, but I'm very happy to be here with you, first and foremost. I'm Ibrahim Yunus. I'm the executive secretary of Ishik Foundation. It's a charity-based foundation in Tanzania. But I'm also a managing director of Feza Schools. Their schools are under the Ishik Charity Foundation. I'm also doing my PhD in the University of Dar es Salaam. And my specialty is servant leadership in education. So I'm a teacher by profession. I teach math, by the way. So today I'll be actually representing all the teachers, hopefully, because teachers are the ones who are taking, they're spending most of the time with their students. I think they spend more time, even more than parents. So we cannot take teachers out of the equation. So I speak on behalf of the teachers today, but also speak as a father to a daughter. She's 10. So probably I'm also fighting for her. And I'm coming from Sub-Saharan Africa. So we are the ones who are experiencing all the problems that, most of the speakers have been talking about. Everywhere, of course, is experienced, but I believe we experience it more because of especially the poverty level of our societies. So today it's a good opportunity, and I'm very delighted to be here with you. And I believe that such kind of conversations will definitely make a difference. And this is what we're all here for, to make a difference. So maybe to be quick, since we don't have much time, I will not go too much because other speakers, they've talked most about it, but I wanted to just focus on issue of rights. We believe that period poverty, fighting for it, is something that is a noble cause, and we can even grant it that it's a right for everybody. That's why we have to fight for it. And these are the things that other speakers that have talked about: poverty, stigma, and the impact the issue has towards girls' education. But you see that it's estimated that 1 in 10 girls in Africa will miss school when they have their periods. When we go to other information or statistics, we see that also girls who cannot access sanitary items, they are unable to attend school because of the risk of bleeding, or the stigma whereby others will tease them. But also, even if they are not exposed to any of such situations, they might feel uncomfortable. So when you look on the other statistics, though, they are devastating. In India, 23% of girls drop out caused because of that. In Ethiopia, 56% of girls, they go absent. 31% in Brazil, 29% in New Zealand, 84% in one of the US survey. It's not seen over there. But these are devastating numbers, ladies and gentlemen. But I want to talk more about education and why girls' education. As a teacher, we want girls to be educated because we believe that if we educate girls, we're going to protect them from abuse, and we'll create safe environments for them, especially, from early marriages, early pregnancies. But we believe educating girls will improve their health, because when they're educated, they will take care of their children properly. They will also live a safer life, but they will also earn proper income, and it will help to sustain their own, needs, but also they will lift the entire family, because when you educate a woman in Africa, you're educating the whole family, and they are educating the future children also. We also have the last one here, I think, government roles. I just quickly came up with a few things that the governments can do, but it's all about provision. I know we're talking about access. We're also talking about starting the conversations. We need to do both parallel, but in Africa, the issue of access is still a major problem. So we cannot take it out of the equation, or we cannot take it lightly. When Carrington was speaking, I did some math as a math teacher. I found out that in USA, the minimum wage of someone, so when they buy the menstrual and tampons and things like that, it's around 0.8%. But in Tanzania, with a minimum wage of around 150 to 160 USD per month, it brings to 3% to 4%. And it's a luxury. To buy the menstrual facilities is a luxury, and the people there, they have other needs that they need to attend. So issue of access is still something that we need to really work hard on, but also the reforms. And I know other speakers have talked about reforms, for example, abolishing tampons taxes, and we have countries that have already done that one. NGOs, and this is most of us, we need to play our part. And in leadership, we know that leadership is an activity, and everyone can be a leader. And we don't need to wait for governments to take action, but even civil societies, we can do something. And it all starts with me, it starts with you. So we can donate, we can support in provision of education and creating awareness. We can invest in infrastructure for sanitation facilities, clean water, which is still a major issue in Sub-Saharan Africa. So I'm coming from Ishik Medical and Education Foundation, but we also have further schools. We try to provide better education, but we try to reach out to impoverished families. SDG 4 with quality education, SDG 5 with gender equalities and so on. We are trying our level best, but we also have initiated Edu Heroes Initiative. So Edu Heroes Initiative, it aims to train servant leadership skills to the teachers. As I've said, teachers, they spend most of the time with the kids, especially in rural areas. In rural areas, you find that most of the people are illiterate. The only people that are literate in the rural areas are either civil servants or teachers who are placed in the schools stationed in those villages. So we can use these teachers. They can actually create awareness. They can champion the SDGs. They can also fight for poverty, period poverty. And that is what we are trying to do. And we believe these teachers, if we train them with servant leadership skills, they can go in their rural areas, in their stations, in their schools. They can try to find local solutions to their local problems. They can try to create awareness, but we need to induce them. They need to be equipped with servant leadership skills. We have 2 videos.
Hello everyone, my name is Selina Robert. I'm a student of Carrington Secondary School, Class 4. Today we are so happy and grateful to receive the gift of sanitary pads. As girls, these sanitary pads, they will help us to protect ourselves during our menstrual period.
My name is Madam Rosie Njoele from Zinga Secondary School. I am the house teacher in this school. We thank you very much for your support. This pad will bring us peace and harmony during the menstruated period. Our students will be happy, healthy, and comfortable when they use this pad during the menstruated period. This situation will make them to be good at the class, to lead harmony and peaceful, and then to attend the school all over the months, because there is no need for them to stay blessedly. We invite you next again when you have any support you can give us. Thank you very much.
Well, that is it. Thank you for your attention.
So we have 5 minutes to finish all the program, and we can get a few questions. You choose.
Yes, at the back, please.
Just trying to move us back to innovations in technology. As a background in the campus of HMI in New York City for 35 years, it was actually my dad who told me, write down the innovative research. It was my dad. That was on paper. Now we have technology. It's hoping not to promote any one app at all, but what's important for young people is understanding track their periods, track helps them understand what's wrong. Even if they're not having sex, that's going to build the agency and autonomy and know what's happening with their baby. So I'm hoping that in some way we can also use these apps or old school just take track of how and let them know about it. So thank you all.
Thank you. I think it was a comment. Yeah, thank you very much.
I think in Scotland we have to pick up my period app, which is where you can access menstrual products, but we also have really high levels of digital poverty and digital literacy. So I think that it's fantastic to have apps, but having worked in a lot of countries that don't have access to them, sometimes that can be challenging. So I think the idea of just having a calendar is actually a really great skill, and that the one thing that's highlighted government is that's going to be your initiative to access all people. And a lot of people in Scotland don't have smartphones, and we also have people that are not completely digitally literate and actually know how to deal with apps. So yeah, it's definitely a part of the solution, but not all of it.
Thank you, Dr.
Sorry.
It's good you're here. Yes. Yes, please.
You used a sentence saying that when you educate women, you're educating the whole family. And
Yeah.
I found that really
Sorry, one here and you will the last. Thank you.
Again, I found that pretty powerful. Like it's really important to understand like the cultural context that women plays in that role. But I just want to know, like, your organization, do you plan on educating men as well in the future? Because obviously you didn't mention it, but that's important. So I want to mention it as well. I just want to ask in your turn.
So the question was, during my presentation, I mentioned that educating a woman is educating the family, and our participant found it very powerful. But she's also asking, what are we doing to educate men also? In Tanzania, I'll speak in the Tanzanian perspective. The issue of creating awareness, we have started working on it, and it's a good thing. Even in the issues that are related with girls, education in terms of their menstrual, we involve boys also. We want them to feel that this is a normal, natural thing. So it is done. But I was talking about why we don't want girls to miss school, because when they miss school, they are not able to get proper education, and they are not able to excel to continue to a university degree and so on, so that they can, create a good income and, life for themselves. As a teacher, I can maybe translate what it means to miss. Let's say a girl misses 5 days, 6 days of the school in a month. If you look in the number of days and the periods of lessons, if you combine like in those days, a student might be missing either half a topic, or some topics even one full topic. So if you make it 10 months of the year, excluding the holidays, okay, it makes about, either 5 topics to 10 topics. And this is huge. This is a big miss. So that is why we have to try to help our girls be able to be comfortable to come to school, so that they don't miss school and they get better education. That was what I meant. But thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay, one last question, briefly question and brief answer, because we have to finish in 1 minute. Yeah. Sorry about that.
How best do you think, like, how can we best get men involved in the conversation?
Yeah.
Can you paraphrase the question?
Yes. So the question is, how can we best involve men in the conversation? And I think Time to Help has started to do it by inviting us. And I'm happy that I'm invited. Without invitation, as a man speaking, I will not take my own step to come. I might feel that, it's something private, but if we start to create an environment, for example, in the schools, in our societies, in the families, that the issue of period is just a normal issue, and even men, we also have our own issues. So these things, they can be discussed. So I think invitation, I can say, is the first and foremost thing, and that can be created now by creating environments, proper environments. Whenever there's any kind of such education, boys should also be invited. Debates can be done in schools. I'm talking in the schools perspectives. We can have debates. We can have, role plays, dramas, and so on, just to create awareness. I think it is very much possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yunus. Anyway, you can hear me, I believe. Thank you very much for coming, as I said earlier, on a Monday morning, giving us your time. As I mentioned, just a second, sorry, please do follow us. That would encourage us what we are doing. And also, as I said before, we have some tote bags. Hopefully you will like the design, and notebook, pens, leaflets, and cards. Please take as much as you can. I don't want to take them back to London. And one last thing before you leave, as we have mentioned, there isn't many men present here. Please next time bring men as well, and let's include them in the conversation as well. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.